All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Thank y'all for joining me on today. I don't know when you're watching it. If you're watching it live, we're on August 7th. Crazy. We're a little over halfway through the year. Which is kind of why we put together this strategic mid-year kind of check-in for law firm owners, kind of just get you guys on track, make sure that you're checking in. So, one of the things, just to kind of tee this up, um, purpose of this webinar is, I think as business owners, and I'm speaking I'll give you my background here in a bit, but I was an attorney and had a law firm. And as I was running a law firm, I think that we tend to run, and not really stop and think about the business that we're actually running. I mean, think sitting here reflecting right now, summer's over, kids are going back to school, and we're over halfway through the year. It's just crazy. So if anything, I hope what you get out of this, I'm going to give you guys some, good strategic things that you can take away, some things to think about. But one of the I think there's value just in pausing for a minute and reminding yourself that, oh, wait, let's just kind of check in where we're at this year. Are we reaching our goals? Are we hitting our targets? Are we doing the things that we need to do? So, anyways, to kind of tee that up, glad you guys are here. Let's kind of dive into it. So this is all the disclosure stuff. This is not legal, tax, or financial advice. You guys are very familiar with disclosures to that effect. So if you are not a client, or this is kind of the first time you're learning a little bit about us, just a little bit about Stivers Wealth Management. We're headquartered located in Knoxville, Tennessee. Firm was founded in 1992, actually by my dad, Brian, and I joined him earlier in 2024. But some of the things that I think are most important or relevant from my perspective is, obviously we're talking financial planning, we're talking investment, we're talking strategies and all of that. But the way I like to think about it is a lifelong partnership of helping people reach their goals, reach their dreams, right? If you're paying attention to, stocks this week, or, really at any given time, you've got a lot of ups and downs. And so you kind of, in my opinion, you kind of need somebody who's in your corner, keeping you disciplined, keeping you, where you're not panicking, where you're not freaking out with what's going on, but really someone who is also helping you achieve those goals, right? Are you doing those things? Why are you saving the money that you're saving? What is it that you're investing for? And ultimately, again, having that lifelong partnership. And that's kind of the business that I think we're in. So myself, I was born in Florida, raised actually in Knoxville, Tennessee, did my undergrad at a small school in North Carolina before going to law school at the University of Miami. And I was a practicing attorney for over a decade, built a reasonably successful estate planning practice before selling the firm to another firm, and then joining Stivers Wealth Management in 2024. And there's kind of always been a dream of mine to join the firm, to work with my dad, to build something in the financial planning space. And one of the big distinctions for me, and one of the things that caused me to come over to this side of the practice was, in the estate planning world, it's very transactional. It's very, someone would come to us for a trust or, some sort of estate planning issue. We complete the job, and then they were done, and we never really heard from them again until, they passed away, or they needed some sort of amendment or change. And I felt like there was more that I wanted to be more involved with the family, with that individual. And so, being on this side of the table, our clients have been with us for, many years. We have deep, intimate relationships with them, even their kids, even some of the grandchildren. And so that's one of the exciting things, and one of the reasons I ended up joining the firm. And so my niche and people that I work with is, kind of makes sense, primarily attorneys. Having been one myself and still have an active license in Florida and in Tennessee, I kind of understand the attorney world as far as, go, difficulty of dealing with clients, judges, courts, all that sort of stuff. And so that's kind of my passion is helping high achieving attorneys reach their financial goals. And then just a fun fact: after undergraduate, I was in the Peace Corps, spent about 3 years in Honduras, and am fluent in Spanish. So overview of what we're going to go over. Again, like I said in the very beginning, this is just kind of high level, if anything, just to get you thinking about checking in on your business. Again, I know as a business owner, the cliche of, work on the business, not just in the business. And I think that's very true. And I think that even though we're a little bit over halfway through, if you're watching this in August, it's still a great time to check in. I think it's a good time just to, set a day aside and just kind of think about, are you on track for reaching your goals? Is your business in a place where you want it to be? So that's kind of, what I wanted to achieve with this talk today, was just to kind of get you guys thinking about what are the things that, we need to maybe check in on. So we'll go for about 40 minutes. And yes, it is going to be recorded. So we'll put that up on the website, steigerswealth.com, in the next couple of days or so. But this is kind of what we're going to talk about, looking at reviewing, adjusting business plans, assessing performance. What are some strategic decision-making things that you should be thinking about? Integrating your business with financial planning, give you guys a couple takeaways, and then we'll have a Q&A session and then wrap up. So with that, let's kind of dive in. So, importance of mid-year business planning, right? Well, it allows you to reflect on where you're at, right? So again, depending on, if you're watching this in August, if you're 8 months into the year, or if you're watching it at some other point, halfway, I don't think, let me pause. I don't think, you should be updating your business plan every single month. I think that's a little tedious. Even if you don't have anything written down, a month, even a quarter is probably not enough time to let you see where you're at in your practice. But at the halfway point, it's a good time to kind of just pause, check in with where you're at. Are all the things that you started the year out, are you still doing them? Are you, on track to reach your end of year goals? And if you are, great. If not, you have enough time to adjust. The landscape, the legal landscape is always changing. New rules, new laws can come out that may, affect your practice. So it gives you time to kind of, adjust as necessary. So again, that's why I think mid-year, I like to, do kind of quarterly check-ins personally for my businesses. But I think at a minimum, mid-year is when you need to be checking in. So what is it that you should be looking at, right, when you're doing these check-ins? Again, there's a lot of different stuff, but I kind of boiled it down to a couple different topics: goals, strategies, your financials, and your operations. Goals, right? I think most of us, again, wearing the attorney hat and the financial planner hat, very goal-oriented professionals. So I think great idea, and most of you all probably do have short and long-term goals, right? Are you on track to reach those goals? Again, just taking stock of where you're at, are you hitting those? Are you hitting those goals? I like to just, I have, different things that I'll look at on a weekly and a quarterly basis, just to kind of remind me, like, oh yeah, I wanted to, make sure I did a webinar this quarter. So am I on track to do that? That might be a short-term goal. Whereas maybe revenue goals, I want to do X amount this year in revenue, might be a little bit longer-term goal. Maybe you do a 2, a 5, a 10-year goal as well. But taking stock of where you're at with those goals. Strategies. Are you on track to reach those goals? And this could be marketing, this could be clients, this could be, maybe speaking engagements, getting known in your community, key relationships you want to make. So are the strategies that, you're using to reach your goal, do those need to be tweaked? Do those need to be adjusted? Financials, we'll go into this in more detail, but there's definitely some key revenue or key metrics that you want to keep track of: revenue, expenses, profit margin, cash flow. We'll dive into that a little bit later as well. But again, revenues and financials, definitely, I think something you probably are and should be looking at more than on a, two times a year, mid-year check-in. But again, high level, something you want to be paying attention to. And then operations, right? If you have a team, do you have a team member that, has not been pulling their weight? Maybe it's time to go. Do you have some subscriptions, dues, maybe some market or technology you yet to pull the trigger on? Just looking at all of those things, is it time to maybe make some changes? So assessing your performance, financial metrics to track. Okay, so these are some of the key, again, there's a lot that you could be tracking. I just picked a couple that I thought were, very relevant for law firms, probably some things that you're already tracking. But if not, just hopefully a kind of reminder to pay attention to, because I think any business, any entrepreneur, these are things that should be paid attention to. Revenue growth, very simple. How much money is coming in? Top line revenue, right? Are you tracking that, right? Now, for me, when I was practicing as an attorney, this is something I was paying attention to on a daily basis, just because as an estate planning attorney, it was very transactional. You paid me X amount of dollars, per estate plan. So that would come in, typically on a daily basis. So I was more in tune to that model. As a financial planner, depending on what we're doing, we might get paid quarterly. Now I'm still going to track what new clients are coming in, but I might not be paying attention to it as much as I was as an attorney. But pay attention to that. And are you benchmarking that against other attorneys, against other attorneys who practice what you practice? So going down to profit margin, what's your profit margin? You've got your top line revenue, you've got all of your expenses. What's that bottom line revenue? What's that bottom line number? And I'm sure a lot of you, if you've been practicing for any amount of time, as your expenses, as your expenses go up, your revenue goes up. Sometimes that bottom line revenue goes down or stays stagnant. And I think, as you progress in your professional career, in your business, that profit margin becomes much more important. It becomes a lot less about top line revenue and a lot more important that bottom line revenue. So that's something that you want to be paying attention to. And then cash flow, right? How much is coming in versus how much is going out? Very basic. But what I found is a lot of times, and it could just be because we don't want to pay attention to the numbers, it doesn't make us feel good. But a lot of times the way people manage their expenses and their income is just, how much money do I have in the bank account right now? Do I have enough to pay the bills? If so, great. You feel in a good mood. If you don't, you feel kind of depressed and you feel like things aren't working out, right? And that's going to happen in any business. There's ups and downs in any business, but I think you can get a little bit more granular so that you can plan for maybe some of those slower times. Now, how do you interpret that data? Okay, now this is, I think, is where it really gets interesting. So understanding revenue streams. So I'll use myself as an example. When I was an estate planning attorney, we had different services that we offered, right? We might have a last will and testament as the base of the plan. We might have a trust. We might do ancillary things like deeds to put the property into the trust. We might do more complex planning, ILITs and tax planning, different things like that. And I kept a separate, on my P&L, I would keep a separate line item for each of those services. So if you're a divorce attorney, right, maybe you do uncontested divorces, maybe you do contested divorces, and maybe you do prenups, maybe you do postnups, maybe you do custody, right? There's different things that all fall under that umbrella of family law or of divorce law, for example. But they might not all be super profitable. And again, to give you an example for my stuff, we used to do deeds for, a client would call us and they say, hey, we need to put this property into the trust. And a lot of times, this is Usually if we were doing it for our client, we would include it in the package, but this would maybe be someone else who, they referred to us by an attorney in New York, who had a trust in New York, but maybe they had a property in Florida or in Tennessee, and they needed us to transfer the property into the trust. Well, there's only so much we could charge for that deed, right? A couple $100 maybe, plus the fee. Well, it ended up not being a very profitable service for us, because by the time we opened the file, by the time we paid the paralegal to do it, by the time we, everything that went into it, we were getting very low margins on it. And we just decided, we can't do this. Even though that we get $500, whatever it was, it really wasn't profitable. And I find a lot of businesses, now when you're struggling and you just need money, you take it. But as the business matures, it's a good idea to really be very specific and really look at each of those revenue sources, revenue streams, and are you actually making money for it, right? Maybe it costs you more money to get that type of business as well, right? Maybe there's marketing dollars, you're spending a lot of money on Google ads, or you're buying leads, or whatever it is. And when you run the numbers, the profit is just not the same. So definitely something you want to be paying attention to. Analyzing the profitability, again, kind of, very related. What I would recommend on this is check out what your benchmark should be. Again, give you an example. When I was in practice, I was a part of a national association of estate planning attorneys. There was, kind of a elite group of estate planning attorneys. You had to pay to be in it, very expensive. There's about 150 firms throughout the country who were a part of it. And twice a year, we would submit our financials anonymously. We would submit our P&Ls, and their team would compile all of the data, and they'd give it back to us. And they'd show how much money, top line revenue, how much we were spending on marketing, what our overhead was, average cost per employee, all this different type of stuff. But ultimately, it would show how profitable our firms were. And generally, 20 to 30%, if you fell within that range, between 20% to 30%, you were within the benchmark. There were some outliers. There were some firms who were at 40%, which was crazy, but there were some that were that profitable, and there were some that were low. But in that 20 to 30% was a pretty healthy margin to be in. So for attorneys, I think across the board, I don't think that's just estate planning attorneys. The only one that might be a little bit different is personal injury attorneys, just because their revenue can be such higher, bigger cases and whatnot. But for most law firms, that 20 to 30% is probably a pretty healthy range to be in. But you might want to try to find other attorneys in your market that do what you do, or try to find other divorce attorneys, if that's what you do, to find out what that benchmark is, to see if you're profitable or not. And then evaluating cash flow. So reviewing cash flow statements so that you can adjust and maybe make some changes for when you know that you're going to have ups and downs, right? And so again, law firms can be cyclical, right? It depends on the type of firm. They're not as cyclical as other industries, certainly. For me, I would notice that summers tended to be a little bit slower, just because people were busy, they were traveling with their kids, etc. But not always. Sometimes we'd have, I know one year we had a July that was like record month. So it just kind of depends. But you can see trends. I've heard from again, not to just keep mentioning divorce attorneys, but I've heard from divorce attorneys that January tends to be a pretty high uptick. People didn't want to get divorced during the holidays, whatever it is. So they tend to, but then December tends to be a pretty slow month because people don't want to be getting divorced, during the holidays. So if you can kind of identify those trends, it gives you time to adjust and potentially plan for when those ups and downs are going to come. So those are the three. Again, there's a lot of different metrics that you can be looking at, a lot of different financial statements, a lot of different things. But those are three big ones that I think definitely at this point in the year, you should be paying attention to, just to kind of give you an idea of where you're at and start making changes if necessary. Now, what about the operational performance metrics? So several different ones here, right? Client acquisition costs and the efficiency. So how much money are you spending to get that client, right? It can be eye-opening if you really run the numbers. Now, I know attorneys a lot of times out here, well, we don't spend money on marketing, we just get referrals. And that might be the case, but you've got to account, if you're not going to account for your money, account for your time. How many events are you going to, right? How many lunches, how many coffees, how many happy hours, all that sort of stuff, right? That all, apart from the hard cost, the hard dollar cost, you're also spending your time. And, you know, you want to really try to identify how much time and or money you're spending to get that client. And sometimes it's eye-opening. So again, as an estate planning attorney, one of the things that I used to do for a couple of years was seminars. We do events, and we would rent a hotel room, rent a room at a hotel, mail out invitations, get people in the room, do a seminar, ask them to, you know, have a free consultation, and then hope that they would hire us. And we got clients from almost every single time. But the cost of acquisition was so high, it was so expensive to do it that, you know, we had to decide, had to make a decision whether or not it was worth it. Or maybe it is, maybe it is not. You know, I'm not saying you know, sometimes the spend can be worth it for a variety of reasons, but it's just a good idea to know what you're actually spending, because sometimes when you see those things, it's eye-opening, right? And what is actually working. And it kind of allows you to, again, one more example on this is I used to be very involved with one specific organization, and I spent so much time going to events all the time. And you feel really busy because you're like, man, I'm going to all these events. I'm going to like 10 events a week. Like I know all these people. But if you don't get any business out of it, is it really worth it? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, just something to track. Client retention and loyalty. Again, something to pay attention to. There's a couple client-centric ones that I put on this list. So, you know, client satisfaction scores. Are you, you know, reviews are a great thing. So if you're getting reviews, that's obviously a great way to see whether or not your clients are really happy or not. And obviously referrals as well. I think that with law firms, we tend to not just go out and ask for referrals just because it doesn't feel maybe professional, maybe we're a little uncomfortable about it. Or if, you know, you representing someone who got a DUI, you may not be able to just say, hey, if you know anyone else who gets a DUI, send them my way. But there's things that you can do, and I would recommend from a marketing perspective that you do just to keep in front of those clients, because at some point it is possible they will have referrals for you. So again, something to take a look at. Average case resolution time. This is a big one, definitely for PI firms, right? Definitely for personal injury firms, because those cases can take on average 15 to 18 months or longer, depending on the type of case that it is. So if you're a PI firm, that's definitely a metric I would recommend that you pay attention to, because you'll start to see how certain types of cases, you know, negligent security, wrongful death, those are going to take a very long time. How long is it taking your firm to complete those? Whereas maybe you know, your standard, you know, car accident taking, you know, 12 months or 8 months or something like that. Again, just helps with the cash flow, helps on, you know, where you're going to be at, how much staff you're going to need to float that overhead. Or for me on the estate planning, I didn't want to have clients. I tracked this very, I was very intent about this, because I didn't want a client to come hire me to do their will, to do their trust. And then, you know, I don't hear from them for 8, 9 months. And then God forbid they die. We haven't completed the plan. And now I'm potentially on the hook for malpractice, you know, so, and it was bad. I just didn't want to keep it on the book. So we actually, what we did is we put into our engagement letter that the case had to be completed within, I think we said 90 days. And if it was not, due through no fault of our own, then we'd close the matter and they'd have to pay a $450 reopen fee. And I'll be honest, clients loved it, because in the estate planning world, it wasn't really something they wanted to do anyways. So this gave them a little bit of incentive to do it. Standardizing performance evaluation. So big one if you have staff, right? And I think a lot of most law firms, that tends to be their biggest expense, is their biggest overhead is their staff. And staff, I'm sure every business owner, it's one of the worst and best part of of being a business owner is hiring, firing, managing staff. It can be very challenging. One of the best things I think I ever implemented when we had our team was quarterly reviews, right? And we had a couple different ways of doing it. I'm a big believer in the EOS system, Traction, if you all have read that book, but big believer in that system. But quarterly reviews, and it wasn't a way to say, hey, you're doing good, you're doing bad. It was more of just kind of a check-in, right? Where are you at right now? I don't think too many firms do it this way anymore, but historically, a lot of businesses would just wait till that quote unquote end of year review. Well, if you haven't really checked in since January and now it's December, number one, they might have been doing a horrible job. And number two is, now they're going to feel that wrath all at once. And it's a lot more intense when you've kind of built up that, frustration with them over time, and they might not be happy as well. So one, I think you should always be trying to nip some of those things in the bud as soon as possible. Just if you see an issue, point it out, move on from it. But quarterly reviews, I think, is a great thing. So I would implement some sort of standard performance reviews in the firm. Guiding strategic decisions, we'll talk about that in a second. And then KPIs, selecting and implementing KPIs. So KPIs being key performance indicators. So what are the things that are most important for you to be tracking? I'll use marketing and leads as an example, because I think that's relevant I know that's relevant for law firms. So one of the things I always wanted to track was thinking about it as a funnel, right? And you probably have heard of this. You got all these people coming in, hopefully. You met them at a networking event. They signed up for your newsletter. They saw you on the billboard. They reached out. They're, on your email list, whatever it is. You got all these people, and I would call those leads, right? And we don't know if they're qualified. We don't know if they actually need the service that you offer, right? Maybe again, you do bankruptcy, and you don't know if they actually are going to need that service. But that's the top level. You just want to try to get as many people up there as possible. Then you filter them down to the next level, which I call prospects, right? Now they've taken the next step and they've basically qualified themselves, right? Maybe they, reached out requesting, a white paper or a free report or something specifically for your service. They specifically reached out for bankruptcy, or maybe they came to your seminar. Whatever the case is, they're qualified, and people measure these different ways, but they've somehow qualified themselves. So that'd be the next level. Then from there, they've booked the consultation. So I know most attorneys, that's what you're trying to get them to. You're trying to get in front of them to have some sort of consultation with them, right? So now how many have scheduled the consultation? So I want to keep track of all of those. But then the next thing I want to keep track of is how many of those who booked the consultation actually showed up. I'm sure this has not happened to any of you all, but it is possible that someone will book a consultation and then they won't actually show up to it. I called that the no-show rate, right? Obviously, you want that to be as low as possible, but you do this long enough, you will have somebody book a consultation and then ghost you and not show up. So what is that number look like? Then from there, now you're sitting with that prospect. They've gone through your marketing system. They're meeting with you. Do they hire you? Do they not? Again, I'm sure everybody you've met with has always hired you. I've had the experience where some people don't hire me. I don't get it, but it happens, right? So they don't hire me. So now, what is my conversion? So those are all, that's an example of different KPIs that I would want to track, right? I kept track of them in my law firm. I keep track of them in my financial planning business. So those are just some things that you could keep track of. Again, not all of these you're going to be looking at on a daily, weekly basis. There'll be some things that aren't as relevant. I think the example I just went through, that's a pretty relevant one that I would keep track of on a weekly basis, because marketing fuels everything else. So I think those are very important, but those might be some things that you want to keep want to keep track of. All right, strategic decision making. All right, so now that you've kind of looked at your business, you had goals that you set at the beginning of the year, or if you didn't, now after this, you're going to be like, oh crap, let me see actually what I want to do the rest of the year. What do I want the next year to look like? You can start making decisions based on that. So I talk about short-term versus long-term. Where are you trying to get the rest of this year versus the next 5 years? What you're going to be doing to try to get there is obviously going to look a little bit different. Another example in marketing, just because I love all things marketing. Well, today you might need to go networking because that's going to yield some short-term benefits, and that's going to help you with that revenue goal for this year. But long term, you might want to be working on SEO for your website. Not going to pay immediate dividends. Writing blogs for your website, not going to pay immediate dividends, but over time, that is going to pay more dividends, right? That's going to help you with your long-term goals. So you got to put things in different buckets. And what's a priority now versus what's, maybe a little more priority for later on. Risk management. Risk, we talk a lot in the financial planning world. I think law firms, in my opinion, are relatively simple businesses. Not easy, but very simple. You can quote unquote hang the proverbial shingle and get off to the races. But there are some things to pay attention to. Obviously, I'm sure, you've seen laws, or hopefully not, but been affected by laws that might have changed your business, killed it entirely. So there's things that we can't always, necessarily plan for. But as we see things coming down the pipeline, like a legal Zoom, like online do-it-yourself wills, all that sort of stuff does change the landscape. And it's just something to be aware of, and just kind of always be somewhat paranoid and plan for those things. Innovation and adaptation. There's so much, probably too much, fintech in my world, financial technology. There's a ton of legal technology, can be a little bit overwhelming, but there's so many great things that you can use that will make your business more efficient and really help you stand out from competition. Okay, so how do you integrate these two? Obviously, well, let me say this. The biggest takeaway from this kind of part right here, and when I was mapping this out, it kind of had me, when I was writing this, it kind of had me reflect, because as business owners, and definitely as law firm owners, we tend to have our, identity for sure, but all of our wealth built into the business. And we tend to, keep quote unquote investing into the business. We're using our business. This is not tax advice, but we use our business, sometimes, if allowed, to pay our car, pay insurance, whatever it is, we tend to do that. But as we start thinking about exiting the business, or as we start thinking about retirement, or as we start thinking about, next phase of life, a lot of times we realize we've just been putting all that money into our business, and we haven't really started accumulating our wealth on the personal side of things. And so I say this as someone who, successfully sold a law firm. There is money to be had in putting in money into your business. But I'll tell you, and this is from, a lot of research and people I've spoken with, there's only a few, and I'm not going to go too far down into selling a law firm, but there's only a few things that a potential buyer wants. All that money that you're putting into, technology and making your systems more efficient and all of that, people don't care about that, right? Most of the time, that's not what a potential buyer is going to look at. And so it's great that you're putting money into your business, but you got to see the connectedness between your business, your personal, your business finance, and your personal finance. And that's why I said kind of understand the interconnection between the two. And the big theme of this slide is how the sooner that you can start taking money out of the business to start building some of that wealth on the personal side, the better. Because at the end of the day, if you just keep plowing money back into the business, but you're not, you know, depends on what your investment. You're not buying real estate. You're not funding a 401k. You're not funding an IRA. You're not, whatever it is, you're going to be in a difficult spot. And so, again, what I've seen is the sooner that you can start thinking about, you know, not just plowing money back into the business, but start reaping some of those benefits and setting some money aside, the better you'll be. So understand the interconnection, you know, how those two work together, you know, risk tolerance. We talk about risk in the financial planning world a lot on investment side. I find a lot of attorneys are a lot more risk tolerant on the business, a lot more willing to take on debt to invest, but on the personal side, a lot more risk adverse. Not good or bad, just something to be aware of. Strategies for integration, right? Have goals on both sides, your personal and your business goals. Cash flow on both sides, right? What's coming in, what's going out on both sides. Compensation strategies, tax strategies, you know, again, all kind of thinking about at some point, whether you sell your firm, you merge your firm, you just reduce your hours, the revenue on that side will go down. And so are you putting money onto the personal side so that you can reap some of those benefits? Okay. All right, so actionable takeaways. So these are some of the things that I thought were, you know, some things that you could do. Schedule regular business reviews, right? So if you're watching this, you know, you're kind of already taking that step. Hopefully it's got you thinking about this. I personally think that quarterly check-ins with yourself are absolutely essential, right? Again, I've mentioned it before, I'm a big believer in the traction system and the EOS, which would have you do basically weekly meetings to kind of review key metrics. This is not an overhaul of the business completely, but it is something that allows you to just kind of check in on those key things and continue with your, you know, continue carrying on. Quarterly, I think, is enough time to make some minor tweaks, not to basically say, you know, our revenue goal was, you know, $2 million for this year, and we're in March and, you know, we're way off. You know, that might not necessarily be enough time to say, okay, we got to just rip up the business plan that we started at the beginning of the year. But it is enough time to see if maybe some of those marketing activities are working. Google Ads, Facebook, right? You probably don't need to wait a full year to see whether certain things are working. So I'm a believer, definitely quarterly reviews, but at least mid-year reviews and the beginning of the year. Implement a financial dashboard. Right? There's certain numbers you just got to know, right? Just logging in to your bank account every single, you know, whenever you do it, and seeing, do I have enough money to make payroll? Great. Do I not? Oh crap, what do I got to do? Is not going to cut it. It's not a way, and definitely it's not a way if you are thinking about long-term what's your exit strategy of your business, because I'll tell you from personal experience, they want to see a very detailed, accurate P&L over the past couple of years. They're not going to, if someone's going to give you money for your business, they're not just going to say, oh, you made $1 million yet last year. Great. I trust you. Here's a check for it. No, they got to see very itemized metric, financials. So if you're not doing that, definitely something that you want to keep track of. I think it probably comes across. I'm a big believer in data. So the more you know, the better. Allows you to make real-time quick decisions. So definitely have some, and I would do this for the personal as well, right? Do it on how much, budgeting is tough, and I don't love the word budgeting, but I think having just a general idea where you check in each week and are kind of looking at what your expenditures are, how much is coming in, can be eye-opening. A little bit sad sometimes, but great to do. Review and adjust budgets quarterly, kind of talked about that. But again, just things you want to pay attention to. I just thought of this, but when you're looking at your budgets, and I see this a lot with law firm owners, is we always want the next latest and greatest technology, and we want the next, subscriptions that are going to help streamline and make our practice more efficient. Well, look and see how much you're paying per user, and maybe you don't even have you know, maybe you fired and one of your employees left and you're still paying for their subscription. I did that, you know, over the past couple of years, and it was kind of frustrating to see, like, why do we have 5 Adobe accounts and one person is using it? So there's small tweaks like that you can make. Short-term, long-term goals, very important. Again, I find most attorneys have goals. I think we're very just kind of in our DNA. We're very much goal setters, but something that you want to do, adjust them as necessary. Don't get too frustrated if you're not hitting them. Just set goals. If you got to adjust, it's okay, but it's a good idea. It gives you, I think you know, there's some psychology behind it. It gives you some reason to do it, as opposed to just saying, you know, if you've ever asked someone, you know, what's your goal for this year, and their answer is more, you know, not super inspiring. So I think I think just having those short, long-term goals makes a difference. And then maximize savings. That's what I was going over on the last slide, was start taking, you know, it's hard, I know. Another book plug would be Profit First. I know a lot of attorneys use that, but the premise of it is pay yourself first, because if your way of investing is, let me take all the money that came in, paid all the expenses, and then whatever's left, I'll put towards investment, not going to happen, right? You need to add that investment, whatever it is, as a top line item, to make sure that comes off the top. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be hard, if not impossible, to actually start making those investments. And the sooner that you can do that, you can still invest in your business. Definitely should invest in your business, because that's the cash cow that's going to allow you to invest. But the sooner that you can start kind of taking some money off the top to invest, you'll be in a much better spot. All right, so we are right on track. Let me check the chat. I got a couple messages here. So, okay, when should I look at taking money out of the business? You know, it's kind of subjective. I would say the sooner the better, right? The sooner that you can designate, you know, a little bit of money, whether it's $100, $500, $1,000, whatever it is that you can do, have some sort of plan. Again, if you wait to just see how much money you have after you've paid all of your expenses, never going to happen, right? You got to start doing it sooner than later. How often should the business plan be updated? Again, I think if you have a written business plan, I've done business plans, you know, in all of my businesses. I go back to them occasionally. I think if you just have some key metrics in place that you're paying attention to, that's probably a pretty good start. I don't think, you know, some people just love writing business plans, which is fine. I don't think you necessarily have to do that every single week, every single month. Again, those long-term goals, those yearly revenue goals, those 5-year plans, those 10-year plans are not going to change that often. It's more those, what am I working on this quarter, right? Those are the things that, you know, if you said, I want to implement this marketing strategy, some are going to take a little bit longer. But typically, I think 3 to 6 months to just kind of see where things are at is a good time to make any updates. Okay. And how much should you be saving and putting aside each month? Well, so if you were to just Google that, I think people would say, you know, the experts would say 20%. Most people can't do that. That's a really hard, you know, especially if you're paying, you know, high interest rates on your house and different things like that. You know, so I can't give you a hard and fast rule. I think that's really up to the individual, their circumstances, their goals, where they're at in life, their age, a whole host of factors. I guess I would just say wherever you can is a good place to start, and just stay disciplined, right? Just stay consistent. Right. I don't see anything else. So we're right at 45 minutes. So perfect. So, all right, leave you with this quote: the best way to predict your future is to create it, right? Take control of it, make plans, go after them, do check-ins. If you're on the right track, great. If you need to make adjustments, great. But mid-year is a great time to great time to start. And if there's, if you have questions, if you want to chat more, if you're not yet a client of the firm, would love to meet with you. You can click on this or take a picture of this Zoom, go directly to my calendar. I'd love to have just kind of a 15-minute conversation, talk business. If you're in that transition stage, love to chat with you about that. Anything I can do to help. You can also email me at justin@stiverswealth.com. So hopefully you found this useful. I know you guys got a lot to do the rest of the day, so I won't take any more of your time, but really appreciate you showing up and hope to connect with you soon. Take care.